What's up, everybody? It's your boy JV here from JBM Sports Media, and today we're going to be diving in to a little segment that I like to call Contenders or Pretenders, and we're going to start with my New York Knicks in the Eastern Conference. Listen, the New York Knicks are 37-22. They've had a really good season so far under Mike Brown in his first year as head coach of the New York Knicks, but there are some inconsistent stretches that this team has gone through, and it's kind of been a theme throughout this season, to be honest with you. At what point this team went 2-9 between December and mid-January. It's their worst run in years, statistically, if you look at that as well. With recent losses up until a couple of days ago against the Cavs and the Pistons, two teams that they're going to probably run into in the playoffs if they want to make it all the way through and represent the Eastern Conference in the finals. And these scoring droughts also have hurt them. And these third quarter collapses as well that I've been noticing that they've been exposed in the second half of basketball games. And I also like to talk about their depth. Their depth has been a massive problem. Landry Shamet has been very consistent. He's been a bright spot. I will say that he's provided some perimeter shooting and some locker room leadership as well that they've needed off the bench as well. Not just their star power providing that leadership, but Shamet has been that guy for the New York Knicks. Also, the bigger problem here, there's a debate around the rotation and the balance of the rotation. I've noticed that some guys are not getting any run anymore. Their depth players and their role players have had some diminished minutes, and one of those guys has been Jordan Clarkson. Jordan Clarkson, when they first acquired him, I thought this was a brilliant move. I really did. This guy's a 17-point average scorer in his career with Cleveland, with Utah, and it just hasn't happened that way with the New York Knicks. He's averaging 9.1 points a game. And against Cleveland the other night, he got 1 minute and 9 seconds of run. I mean, at this point, what are we doing with Jordan Clarkson? He doesn't seem to be in the offensive scheme. He's actually a really good defender as well, a pretty decent defender. But you're not going to get that when you're only getting a minute of run. This was his first game since February 11th. So he has been literally a zero in this rotation when it comes to providing any type of contribution to this New York Knicks team, and that's going to be a massive problem heading into the postseason. The Knicks' defensive identity has been a work in progress. There's been stretches where they show some effort. There's period of lapses, and now that a guy like this is not going to be able to contribute on the offensive side of the ball as well, it's going to affect his defense, and that's been literally a key for Clarkson, is that his offensive game has just not rolled over. This system obviously prioritizes offense, and I thought that this was going to be a system that Clarkson would have been very good in, and it just hasn't happened that way. The role players I think they actually need a clearer role from Brown. I think they need to be told what they're expected of. I think they get thrown out there, and then Brown just kind of switches things up and doesn't really give a clear-cut, concise plan of what he wants from his secondary team, and Clarkson being one of those guys. Their offensive identity is going to be a key in their postseason success, and I think that they expected at least 8 to 10 points more a game from a guy like Clarkson, and they're literally averaging half of what he's averaging in his career, so that's a problem. Another guy to me that's a key is obviously Karl-Anthony Towns, right? He's been better as of late, but he's going to have to show defensive intensity. He doesn't show enough defensive intensity. I think there's times where he does crash the glass a little too aggressively, and it kind of takes away from him offensively. And then due to the fact that he's trying to crash the glass, there are a lot of pick and rolls that get the Knicks caught up on the defensive side of the ball. And it leads to other teams having their big shooters shoot a lot of threes. The Knicks gave up 13 threes the other night against the Cavs. You got to shave that down to at least 6 or 7. You can't be giving up 13 threes to these big teams that you're going to face in the postseason. And that 13 could have been maybe 18 or 19. The Cavs missed a couple of open threes, where that number could have been bigger. They got killed on the three by Detroit. Detroit has now swept them in the regular season. And that's another problem that I have. The Knicks are going to run into one of these teams in the Eastern Conference, in the playoffs. And you got swept by a team that you beat in 6 games last year, and probably a team that we all were pretty wowed by, that they were able to get into the playoffs and give the Knicks a run for their money. Getting through 6 games was a success for that team, especially with how bad Detroit's been the last 5 to 7 years, getting to the playoffs last year and literally giving the Knicks everything they could give. And Karl Anthony Towns needs to be better. I know, like I said, he's been better in the second half of the season, but I do need him to step up defensively. If this team is going to be good, and he can't be streaky offensively. There's games where he scores 11 or 12 points, and he's a complete, utter zero on the offensive side of the ball, and he's got to stay out of foul trouble in order for this team to be any type of successful. My next issue that I'd like to dive into is Mikal Bridges. Mikal Bridges, let me tell you, 5 first-round picks for this guy. I think Leon Rose and the New York Knicks are going to look at this when it's all said and done and say, this was a grave mistake. Maybe I'm past, this ship has sailed, but you could have offered those 5 picks for Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Bucks last year if you were willing to give up 5 picks. Maybe the Bucks would have said, you know what, maybe we don't think we'll get 5 picks for Antetokounmpo in the future. What happens if he gets hurt? Maybe his value will go down. Maybe the Bucks would have been in a different situation, losing Damian Lillard. Maybe they felt like, all right, let's just blow this whole thing up. But that wasn't the case. The Knicks went out and they got a guy who, to me, should be scoring 20 to 23 points a night. That's not happening. His last lines have been weak. He scored 18 points, I believe, against the Cavs, but he was 6 of 17 from shooting. If he didn't go 5 of 6 from free throw line, this would have been another diminished stat line. His other couple of games were 11 and 11, 8 and 9. I mean, that's not gonna be good enough in the playoffs. I'm sorry. And thank God his defense is really good, but his offensive input has to be better. It's got to be better for this team to be successful in the postseason. I'm sorry. And another guy that I think has been inconsistent offensively is OG Anunoby. I mean, the other night against the Cavs, scoring 5 points. Again, against the Pistons, he scored 9. There's other points other points of his last 10 games. He's put up 20 points a couple times, but then the inconsistency shows again with droughts of 8 and 7. It's just not working offensively. It has to be better. This Knicks team is only going to go as far as they go when they get these 2 guys scoring. When you have Bridges scoring 20 and OG scoring 20, that's where you need these 2 guys to be at. They need to be in the high teens, low 20s. And when you get them scoring 11 and 12, that just puts more pressure on Cat and Brunson to have to do what they do. Brunson, we know what he is. He's 27 and 6 every night. He could give you 35 on a an even better night. But when he has his nights, Brunson, where he scores 21, 22, and then you only get 9 or 10 from a guy like OG or Bridges, to me, that's just gonna be a real problem moving into the postseason. And I don't know how this team is going to be able to go through the postseason playing teams like the Pistons and the Cavs. And look what happened to the Cavs. They lose by double digits. A team that is now tied with them in 3rd place in the Eastern Conference. The Knicks are second in the Atlantic. They could potentially, maybe if they get on a good run, hopefully win the Atlantic. But I don't see that happening. I really don't. And not for nothing, Detroit, I think, is going to run away with this conference. I really do. And I don't think they're going to be first-round exits again. I'll tell you that much. And I don't see how the Knicks get out of the second round again. I don't. Look at Boston. Boston is now just as good as the Knicks without Tatum. They're only going to get better with Tatum coming back to this team. Even if Tatum comes back at 85%, let's say 90%, on a better end, if they could get anything out of Tatum, if they can get 20 to 25 a night out of this guy, it's going to be a problem for the rest of the league and the rest of the Eastern Conference. I'm really not confident on this Knicks team playing the defense that they're playing against these teams that have been really actually abusing them. Detroit literally has swept them out of the park, and by a lot, 126 to 111, 118 to 80 was another score. I mean, that has to change. They cannot play this way against these teams and expect to be representing the Eastern Conference in the finals. I'm sorry, it's just not going to happen. And if they do make it through, I think they're only going to get beaten in 5 games to SGA and the Oklahoma City Thunder. If the Nuggets make it, maybe they have a shot against the Nuggets, but I do think the Nuggets can beat them in 6 or 7 or maybe even 5. Maybe they run into a Nuggets team that's just clicking on all cylinders and they just get beat up pretty bad. Like I said, this Knicks identity defensively, it's been a work in progress. There's a lot of lapses, especially in the second half of games. The third quarter has been a problem. Coach Brown's system, obviously, like I said, it prioritizes offense. I think they're going to have to figure out, and maybe it's too late at this point. We're 60 games in almost, and there's 20 some odd games left, and maintaining consistent defensive intensity just hasn't been there. And I think that the Knicks are going to have to figure out a way to put pressure on these top shooters that they go against in the playoffs. How are they going to fare against Donovan Mitchell? How are they going to stop Cade Cunningham? How are they going to go up against Jaylen Brown and you know obviously Jason Tatum coming back? It's going to be a real pivotal moment for the Knicks when the playoffs come around. And I think right now, if I had to put a stamp on this team as a contender or a pretender, I'm going pretender. I don't see them representing the Eastern Conference in the finals. I think they could get bounced out in the second round. I think they could actually get bounced out in the first round, if they had to play a lower seed. Just because defensively they're not as good as they were under Thibodeau. If they get caught in these pick and rolls because Cat is trying to, put himself in position to rebound, I think they're going to get beat on just perimeter shooting and 3-point shooting alone. I think that could literally be a problem for this team. And if, like I said, if guys like Cat aren't producing offensively and they're struggling defensively, they may see themselves lose in the first round. I'm not joking, guys. I'm not joking. Put it in the comments in the chat. Let me know, let me know if I'm crazy. But just what I've been seeing lately from this Knick team, the second half of games has been awful. I mean, they have been getting really slapped around by a lot of good teams, and that's a problem. We can't see this Knick team late stages of playoff games, third quarter, fourth quarter, getting slapped around like that. And now their next test is the Bucks, and the Bucks have been playing way better. They may be in a situation where they're in a playing game and they make it in advance. And do they really want to run into Antetokounmpo? Who's going to defend him? Is Cat going to be able to go 4 quarters and defending him? And I also want to say, Bridges is wonderful defensively. I'm not going to take anything away from him, but he had 5 fouls last night that kind of curtailed his outing. He only had 31 minutes played. A guy that's a starter late in these games, you're going to need 38, 39, 40 minutes out of these guys. And if he's in foul trouble late in games, we're going to have guys having to come in off the bench, a guy like Clarkson, a guy like Shamet. But Clarkson has, like I said, has been literally a ghost. 1 minute and 9 seconds last night of run he got in this Cavs game. And I just don't see how that's a positive outlook as the season comes to an end. And what does this mean for Brunson? It's only going to put more pressure on Brunson to have to score, to have to perform. And he's not going to be able to do it all himself. He's going to have to kick the ball out and have somebody hopefully be able to take the offensive load off of him. And that guy was supposed to be Bridges and OG. Cat could be literally one of the best big man shooters that we've seen. And right now, it's inconsistent. It's inconsistent. And I'm a little nervous with this team heading into the postseason. I want to know what you guys think. With this Knick team ending the season off, listen, they could be a 2 seed or a 3 seed, but Boston and Cleveland are right now, they're fighting the Knicks for that spot. And if the Pistons are going to play consistently the way they've been playing, they should be running away with this conference and be the 1 seed overall. But the Knicks to be in the 2 or 3 seed, they're going to be fighting Cleveland and Boston throughout the rest of this year. And I like I said, I am a little worried. This team needs to figure out their identity defensively. And I think Coach Brown's going to have to figure something out in order to get this team where they need to be. Offensively, if they struggle, I think their defense is going to have to pick it up. How? I'm not too sure. We're going to have to put Cat in better situations where, he could rebound and kick out and maybe get in transition offense. Maybe put the ball less in Brunson's hands. Maybe he can move off the ball and have some guys, step up. A guy like OG, maybe get him open from 3. Maybe have the floor spaced out a little bit and get, Brunson to be able to kick it out to a guy like Cat at the top of the key, get him some open shots. They're going to have to figure out a way to be consistent offensively so it can help their defense out. But that defense needs to pick up the slack, and hopefully they can. Guys, let me know in the chat how you feel about the Knicks' chances in the playoffs as the season comes down to, the wire, for seeding. And I also want to say thank you for the support. We've now eclipsed over 150 subscribers, or we're at about that. And I just want to say it's been a beautiful thing to see all the love and the support that you guys have been giving us. And remember to like, follow, and share JBM Sports Media. We're on TikTok. We are on Instagram, X, and Facebook coming soon. Follow us here on YouTube. Please subscribe to the channel. And like I said, Drop a comment down below. Let us know. Let me know how you guys think the Knicks are going to be able to fare in the postseason as the season comes to an end. Thank you guys so much.